You may have been participating in IEP team meetings for your child, which is an individualized education program team meeting, basically the meeting where you develop the child's special education program. But what you may not know is that the law actually defines who has to be there. Not by name, of course, because that would be impossible to know, but the individuals, the professions that need to be there, and the individuals who have to be part of that team. It's important to know because if the required members of the team are not there, there is a big argument to be made that that's not even an IEP because it wasn't generated by a proper IEP team.
Right. So you want to make sure that all the members who are supposed to be there are at the IEP team meeting. And you know what? The most important people who need to be at the meeting are you, the parents, guardians, grandparents, or the person who's involved in responsible for the child's education.
Right, absolutely. And so we're going to go through what those required members are at another time. But right now, what's really important to know is that there's a required group of people, and there's a reason behind the necessity of each of those people being at the IEP meeting. And it's everything from making sure we understand that the child has parents who are involved and they're meaningful participants in the process, to making sure there's someone there who can interpret the data, to making sure that somebody from the regular education service providers are there so that we know about how the child's doing in the mainstream and that the parents' questions about the mainstream can be answered. There's reasons behind each of those things, but the big picture is that there's a required group of people that need to be there, and you should check the paperwork, Julie, because I've had this happen more than once where I've gone to an IEP team meeting, or more often this happens where I am going through with an individual who's a witness a particular IEP meeting, and I'm going based on the IEP document, and I'm asking somebody questions. And so many times either they are talking about a meeting that they attended and they're not listed as having attended, or I ask them about it because they are listed as having attended, and they don't remember the meeting at all, and they're certain they weren't there. And so you have to check that paperwork. Have you ever had that happen?
Well, I've had the experience where you get the paperwork back, and you look at the list of the people who were there, and you see a name of someone who was never even at the meeting, not for a moment. And then you realize the person who was on the paperwork is actually one of the required members. So
that's disturbing.
That's not something that you want to have happen. And if it does happen, you want to catch it. Because as you said, there are required members of the team. And in fact, if one of the appropriate people isn't there, it may not be a duly constituted IEP team.
So like as with any other aspect of an IEP, which when you receive it doesn't quite reflect either what happened, doesn't capture something that did happen, but you isn't included in the paperwork, there's an error in any way that you think is significant. Certainly who was there is kind of the number one thing we find out. Who was there? Let's start there, okay? If that's actually not accurate, it's a good time to send something to the school district, an email. I just got the IEP in the mail. Thank you so much. I'm sure it was an error, but I see that Mrs. Jones was listed as having attended, and actually she wasn't able to be there. I believe you said that she was sick. Something like that. Just want to make sure that the record's clear. That's important because later the record should be clear as to who was actually there.
Well, the devil is in the details,
That is for
and
sure.
especially if certain team members are supposed to be there in order for the child to receive a free, appropriate public education, a FAPE, by the fact that one of the people who is really supposed to be there isn't there, there is that possibility that perhaps the program wasn't put together appropriately, which could possibly be a denial of FAPE. Am I right or wrong about that?
You're right about that. There are cases that say that. Now, all of this is flexible in that you as a parent can agree with your IEP team that certain people don't have to be there, or you can waive their presence, and there are mechanisms of doing that. But that's by your agreement. That's not just we can't provide somebody here who can tell you about the regular education.
And you know, the other thing I think that's important is we're not going over this because we want you to got them, gotcha. We saw that you made a mistake. That's not what this is about. It's just about making sure that the record is appropriately reflecting what actually happened at the IEP team meeting.
And because you as a parent have a right to have these people there so that you can ask the pertinent questions about your child. That's really the core.